I'd like to give you a quick overview of a feature in Joomla Component Builder. I just quickly install it here. If you have installed the web area for Joomla, you can actually get it right here in the App Store and install JCB. Okay, so we've got it installed, and we have a component here by default called demo. Now let's compile this component and install it onto this current website. So now we should have a component called demo right here in this website. Let's go look at the code quickly. So here in the admin area, under components, there is now a component called demo. I'm just going to open the demo model PHP file, and let's add some custom scripting here. So first time we add a custom script, we use the insert tag with no numbers, just basically the insert tag like that. And then we just close it off again. So basically two of these, with just one with a ending backslash there. And I'm just going to echo hello world on the dashboard above the. So before compiling the component again, if we go back to the Joomla interface, we now see this hello world being echoed in the demo components dashboard. So that's sort of what it does. Now let's go back to Component Builder and let's just compile that same component again. So we've compiled it again, and if we was to go to custom codes and just open that, we should see a new custom code here with hello world, and it has a starting hash target. And this starting hash basically includes 6 lines above the insertion, and that is the fingerprint or the hash of those 6 lines. So let's go look at that in the code just for a moment before we install. That means if we count back here 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, it basically means these 6 lines above this code is basically hashed and used as a fingerprint to identify the insertion of this code from here on forward. So let's install that that snippet now, that compiled component. So I'm going to install it, and if we now open that code again, sorry, this is a mistake. Let me just compile it quickly. If you compile it twice without installing, it tends to add this code obviously a second time. So it's important that you don't compile the component twice when you've made a change, but only once and install. So that will avoid the duplication. So like you see now, it only has this code. Now you see that it added a space above and a space below, and that is to be expected, because if we compiled this now with basically add custom placeholders to yes, and we compile again, you'll see that those spaces is basically what makes up the space. It's those placeholders. So here is the placeholders, and you see that it's changed from insert to inserted. So it's past tense, it's been done. And now at this point it has an IDE also there. Now if I want to change this, let's just again confirm that our area here, if we open demo, there's the hello world. Great. Now let's say we want to change that. You'll have to make sure that this code insertion is actually still in place and actually shows. So that means, so if you want to update it, you need to put the diamonds back on both of these strings, and then let's say you just want to add an exclamation there. Let's save that and compile. So what's going to happen now, it should update the component's custom code in JCB. So if I install it back and we open the IDE, it kept the exclamation and it removed those comments. And if we go to the custom code over here, so let's say custom codes, if we open this one, we see that it added the exclamation there. Now you could also edit that code right here by saying and more, hello world and more, save, and if you compile, it will also update the components code. So you can edit the code here in the JCB interface, and you can edit it in the IDE. So if I open it up now, you'd see it now says and more, and if I go to the IDE, it also says now and more. So you can't change it at this point because the tags are not in place. If you want to change this again, you'll have to first go and basically say add custom code placeholders. Say yes to this. Then compile it again. And doing so, JCB adds the custom code placeholders for you in the right place. So if we go back here, you see that it's there. Now, if you want to add this part to your custom code, the best option is not to actually just add another one here, because this custom code gets inserted with these 6 lines as its thumb or thumbprint. Yes, it takes these 6 lines, then it puts this code in here. So you can't add custom code to this. If you want to include custom coding here, then the best option would be to move this. And how to do that is to add those 2 lines, the diamond back, then to copy that and to do that. Now, because of the fact that it's inserted and not replaced, it will not act as you expect, because currently it will add this and it will add it a second time. So let me demonstrate. It will actually add this script twice because you are using insert. So insert will always move the new script underneath the existing script. It's not going to replace the existing script. Now you can change that, but I first want to demonstrate what's going to happen if I just did what I now did. And let's save this and let's compile. And you're going to see it's going to behave not exactly what you've expected because of the term insert. Okay, so let's see what happened. Like I said, it added this a second time. So now at this point it's using this code as its fingerprint, no longer this, because it moved this code on top of these. Now we can change how it behaves, being either insert or replace. So we can change that. So how you change that is you would change inserted to replaced, like that, obviously with the diamond in there, and then replaced with the diamond in there. That's how you could change this to being, instead of inserted, being replaced. So now we're basically replacing that code, and we're no longer just inserting this. We're replacing that chunk of code. And so if I was going to compile it now, you'll see that the behavior is going to update from being inserted to being replaced. So we save that. Now we go back. We see, it's only here once, no longer twice, and it has a space there and has a space there for the placeholders, which are not showing now because usually you would ship your component without those placeholders, and that's why that switch is there. If we put the placeholders back and we compile, you'll see that it is simply those spaces are taken up by a replaced placeholders. Let's see. See there now it shows you the replaced placeholder. So you can see that you can move your custom script's scope by changing this term from insert to replace, because insert does not replace JCB's code, only replaced does. Insertion literally adds the code after the default JCB code, or Joomla code, any way you want to see that. Now if we go back to the actual code, we see that it now has an ending hash of 3 lines and a starting hash of 8 lines. So that means in the code it counts 8 lines. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 lines up to create a hash, and it counts 1, 2, 3 lines down to create a hash. And that is how JCB detects where to place this code. There is a little drawback in that if you have repetitive code which looks exactly the same across the page. The way you would see it function then is that it will add the code in the first place. It finds that repeated code. And the reason why we had to go with a fingerprint of the code above or below is because of the fact that the actual line numbers change as JCB. Maybe you make a change to this area, you would still want this code to work. So we, instead of using line numbers, we used snippets of code to determine the fingerprints. We could still discuss whether that is the ideal implementation, but that's how it works at this point. And it always varies. That means this could sometimes be 6 lines or sometimes 8 lines. We do tell you here how many lines it's using, so you could see whether you need to expand your code with replace or whether you can do an insertion, because that means after 3 lines you can now add another custom snippet if you wanted, and above 8 lines you could do another one if you like. Now if you want to do changes within those 8 lines, it's best to start thinking about a replacement, moving the replacement. So for example, to say, okay, I want to also grab this area as part of the replacement. Then you just add the diamonds back in, save the file, and basically come back here, compile the component, and it will now automatically add that code as a replacement of the code. If we go back, you'll see that it basically is now replacing this as well. And in JCB, if I was to refresh this, you would see, now it's got all that there. This is moved to 9 lines and this is 3 lines. So that is how the custom coding works. Unfortunately, we are currently seeing some limitations within Windows systems. This website is currently running on a Linux box, so it's an Ubuntu Linux server, so everything works as expected, but because of Windows different implementation of folders and paths, we are still basically trying to resolve that. For the most part it works, but there is on some edge cases which we have found things not actually functioning as expected. If any of you have good knowledge of how to deal with Windows file systems, and then please go over to GitHub, and there is an issue open at the moment. It's just adding files and folders from anywhere. You'll see there's already been quite a discussion on the topic, and we are still looking into resolving this. There are a number of things to take in consideration, so please read through the issue, and if you have good advice for us, then please share. Okay, so that is a quick tutorial about a very useful feature, custom code. But like I've said in many other tutorials, don't use custom code for every little thing, because most of the time JCB might possibly already have a solution, and it's always best to use JCB's implementation, because as Joomla moves forward, JCB's approach also moves with it. And if you've done custom scripting, you're going to again end up at the same place of basically having to go and change your code everywhere to adapt to the new implementations. And so custom coding is really the last resort, as we say. When all else fails, then we go to the IDE and we change the basically hack the core of the default code that JCB builds. Not that I say don't do it, it's just there are better ways, and I think I made a tutorial about that. It is called When to Use IDE Custom Code. I see I didn't add it to the playlist. I wonder why. There is a playlist on the Joomla Mount channel called Odd Tips and Tricks. I'm going to add that video here basically after this recording for you to find it easily on the playlist Odd Tips and Tricks. The video's name is When to Use IDE Custom Code, and I would encourage you to watch this. It's not very long, because it gives you a little bit of a broader perspective of why I still think use JCB as much as you can and custom coding via the IDE as little as you can. For the actual purpose of JCB was to become an easy developing workflow for continued integration with Joomla's changes. So that means if Joomla makes a change to its API or its implementations, we make a change to JCB, and every component then being built with JCB automatically moves on and implements that better approach, and not necessary to actually go and change all the code everywhere as we are used to do. And so the more custom coding you use via the IDE, the more you're actually losing out on that feature. And I have heard some developers say things like, oh, I enjoyed JCB so much, but every time there's an update, I sort of freeze, because what else is going to change now that I need to redo a lot of custom code? And that's where the idea started coming from, because JCB constantly tries to, we as a team, we want to implement better approach to come as close as we can to best practices. And that does mean that the fingerprints of the custom codes do change from time. And yes, I think that's again me going overboard there. Anyway, please do give attention to that, and enjoy.